also maybe lost in the day yesterday, Bernie Sanders, not just victory in Indiana, but then he came out and said, rather ominously, I've got some very bad news for Hillary Clinton if she thinks that this race is over. He has said this before, but he's also said ultimately he will do whatever it takes to keep Donald Trump out of the White House. And so, now that his voice will simply be one of a chorus in attacking Hillary Clinton, where does it leave Sanders' campaign today?
Right. It's interesting that the Republican race wrapped up pretty much before the Democratic race. I don't think any of us predicted that. Sanders staying in this race is problematic for Clinton because she certainly wants to pivot to the general in many ways. In messaging, she wants to spend more time campaigning in states like Ohio, where she was the other day, and really focusing on Donald Trump. Sanders staying in this race only kind of prolongs her shift. And as Steve mentioned the other night, it will take, when does the president start to weigh in? When do all these other Democrats who have been cautious about weighing in on this Democratic primary, wanting it to play out, when do they come and say, look, our party needs to unite, the Republicans have their nominee, we need one too?
It seems that, I heard last night a lot of people saying President Obama looks to be the most effective surrogate for Hillary Clinton at this point.
Right, and at some point he's going to weigh in, and I think what we're going to see is the point where she's reached the point now where he cannot catch her in terms of pledged delegates. That changed last night. He mathematically cannot catch her in pledged delegates, which was a point that she hit in mid-May in 2008 when she was challenging Obama, and that was the point when superdelegates sort of realized that President Obama was the likely nominee, and you started seeing a shift to superdelegates. Well, Sanders this year is hoping to get superdelegates to shift to his side. However, it's a completely opposite scenario as 2008. So at what point do we see the president, do we see establishment Democrats circle the wagons around Hillary Clinton and say, okay, Senator Sanders, this math is not working for you.
I'm guessing that may be happening as we
very soon. I think we'll see it soon.
Leslie, I want to ask you if, for all the problems that Hillary Clinton might have, especially in terms of her unfavorables, which are rather historic at this point, they are superseded only by Donald Trump's unfavorables. These numbers are grim right now. 67% of registered voters view Donald Trump unfavorably. Some 70% of female voters view him unfavorably. 61% of young voters, almost 80% of Latino voters. As Lindsey Graham tweeted last night, he has taken every demographic problem we had in 2012 and made it even worse. Right. Steve mentioned that to-do list, but how to do all of that?
I think that's a really important point, but we're also 6 months away, and there's a tremendous opportunity to build inroads once people start understanding what this is, the nominee. What does that mean? What is he going to be inclusive, and can he correct and work together with a lot of different communities? That's the sign of leadership. That's what the campaign's looking for. I mean, I think another point you're talking about, it's the same outreach you have to do to all these different cohorts you have to do with the donors. I know several big money donors that have yet to get a return phone call in 3 weeks from the Trump campaign, and they didn't want to donate money. They want to see the whites of his eyes and know that he really means business when it comes to everything from building a wall on the border to, keeping trade and commerce going in America. So I think there's a lot of work, groundwork that needs to be done, and he needs to put the right people in place that know how to do it.
It would suggest then, if they see the whites of their eyes, Steve, that perhaps what we heard from Paul Manafort when he went and spoke to the RNC, saying this is all an act, it's all going to evolve. I mean, is it enough? Because those numbers, I don't have to tell you, tell a very grim story right now. Would it be enough? Is there enough outreach that can be done to go get groups he'll need in November?
That's the question. I mean, I agree with Leslie. I agree with Leslie in the sense that I think there is an opening for Trump to try to sway people a different way. Hillary Clinton, keep in mind, does not have great favorable numbers either. She's above 50%, significantly above 50% unfavorable, consistently in polls, and the people's opinions of her have been baked in for 25 years, and they've seen her as a politician for all those years. Trump is coming in from the outside. He's been, people know him as an entertainer, they know him as a businessman, they don't know him as a politician. So he does have an opportunity to speak to Americans as somebody who could be their president of the United States and try to sway them. Whether that will work, I don't know. But we also have to understand that people know Hillary Clinton. And this is what's going to be very interesting. What Trump has done very, very well in this Republican primary season is really expose his competitors' weaknesses. And how is he going to go after Hillary Clinton? Is he going to highlight the emails? Yes, we have already heard him talk about that. The honesty and trustworthy issue, which she has, which is dogging her and has been dogging her in the Democratic primary, that is sure to dog her in the general election. How will all that affect her in the context of Clinton versus Trump, and how will that affect his numbers ultimately in that context as well?
And I think with that in mind, we're going to see a really, negative partisanship take place. So each side kind of coming out in opposition to the other. Trump certainly riles Democrats. He can be a unifying figure of sorts for Democrats. Hillary Clinton has traditionally played that role for Republicans, uniting Republicans against her. So I think that's how they will energize their bases, their opposition to the other candidate.
It also suggests that whomever does win in November is going to have an intensely dissatisfied electorate. There will be a massive percentage of folks not happy with with their president. Leslie, I want to ask you as well. Donald Trump can answer some of these questions by naming a running mate. As he said, he thinks it'll be a political person. He's taken some shots with regard to foreign policy. He said he wants to get things done. So he'll be able to answer those questions and perhaps change that narrative. If you're Hillary Clinton, it seems that one of the big problems with having to still contend with a Bernie Sanders is that she can't do the same. She won't be able to sort of complete her story and begin telling it. How problematic will that be for her?
It's going to make a lot less difference who's going to be on her ticket than it is who's going to be on Donald Trump's. I think if you weigh the magnitude of those two, it's an extraordinary contrast. I think you also, Josh, mentioned a really interesting point when you're talking about the influence of Barack Obama and kind of bringing the Democrats together and the ability to do that, especially around the Bernie Sanders supporters. I think the Bernie Sanders supporters is extremely independent, open-minded, in the sense that they're evangelists for Bernie Sanders, and I don't know that Barack Obama, that our president is going to be able to move forward and really get them mobilized behind Hillary Clinton. I don't see it. It's kind of the rebellious nature of the voter that's kind of fueling this campaign. So she has tremendous challenges when it comes to thinking about those components and uniting the party.
Caitlin, quickly, your thoughts there.
Well, we've seen in exit polling that electability hasn't played as big of a role on the Republican side, but Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side has made, and Bernie Sanders too, they've talked about their ability to beat Donald Trump in hypothetical matchups. Hypothetical matchups at this point are, you take them with a grain of salt because we're not in a general election. As you mentioned earlier, Donald Trump has not faced really political, ads and such from Hillary Clinton. She hasn't faced the onslaught from him. So I think that changes a lot of the calculation here.
Steve?
Yeah, I agree. I think, well, first of all, getting to the vice presidential part of this, Trump has said he needs that political person, right? And I think that, as Leslie said earlier, that balance is going to be good for him because he can sort of sell himself to Americans as the deal maker, but somebody who also has somebody on board who understands how to get things done in Washington. But for Clinton, to get the Bernie Sanders folks, she just needs to get them to vote for her. And the question is how upset will Democrats be, especially Bernie folks, when it's Trump versus Clinton? How riled up will they get about Donald Trump potentially becoming president of the United States? That might be all that she needs to get those people out to vote. It's not about getting them out to give her money or to stand on street corners and hold signs. It's about to get them to the polls. And if there's a threat of Donald Trump becoming president of the United States, that may be just enough to get those Bernie Sanders supporters behind Hillary Clinton.
And whether it's likely or presumptive, it does seem to, it's suggested that it has all begun. Steve Chaggaris, Caitlin Huey-Burns, Leslie Sanchez, you all did it. You overcame your host. We appreciate your time this morning.